Your dreams aren't big enough, if they don't scare you, if they don't keep you up at night, if they don't motivate you when you don't feel like it, they don't get you out of bed, they're not big enough.
Facts.
Your dreams should be so big, so astronomical, so large that it should just scare you into action.
Facts.
You should be wanting to chase after it every single day.
That's facts. Peace, everybody. Welcome back to the Facts Podcast. That is faith, action, culture, truth, and solidarity. I'm Cedric Scott Jr.
I'm Jamonte Banks.
We back for another one. Episode 3. Man, we running right through these. If you've been checking in with us, we really appreciate it. Anybody who has watched on YouTube or checked the podcast on
Spotify,
we
Anchor.
really appreciate it, and on Anchor. So
on your mama radio, grandma station, all that. We everywhere.
Everywhere you want to be, everywhere you need to be, all in your house, in your ear. Glad to have you all. Appreciate you being back. Jamonte, as always, bro, good to see you. Tell the people how you feeling.
Man, I'm feeling good, man. Blessed to be here, dog. Excited about number 3, man. Favorite number. So I'm excited about this episode.
Okay. So we definitely gotta do it up then. We've been digging into some really serious and solid concepts. Talking about relationships, talking about knowledge of self. But I think kind of at the core of a lot of these things for us, being men, right, being young black men, is the idea of manhood, right? And talking about, what does that mean, in the greater scheme of things, right? So real quick, Jamonte, if you had to give a definition, in your own experience, your own words, what is the measure of a man?
I think for me, personally, I would say a measure of a man is someone who sticks true to his values, whatever those values are, is mission driven, lives with integrity, and loves others. Is not wavering in their decision making and their faith, and does not impede upon or try to undermine others to get a one up in the world. You know what I'm saying? I like to use this acronym FAIL. You know what I'm saying? So faith, action, integrity, and love. So I would say like those 4 things kind of embody who I am as a person. So I hope that if someone else on the outside looking in sees, they should be able to see those aspects in the way that I live my life. It shouldn't be a question I should have to put a big sign over my head. They should see it in everything that I do. And if they don't, then that's where, you got to go back to the ground and get some things solved out.
Facts, definitely. So thinking about that, right, what you just said, how you want people to perceive you, or, what the expectation is for how you present yourself, right, as a man. Mm-hmm. For you, because a lot of times we talk about, what we've seen growing up, our representations, things like that. Can you speak to, what was that image for you as a young man, or as a boy growing up?
Oh man, so as a kid growing up, one of the first male figures I had would have to have been my grandfather, and he was a very quiet soul. You know what I'm saying? He didn't say a whole lot. He didn't have to. We knew what time it was with the look. You know what I'm saying? Right. But he was definitely somebody, because he was, married to my grandmother, Linda, and just was very quiet, very sovereign, very, like to himself. And then, my uncle would have been my second, like, real close representation of, like, what a man is, because he's about 14 years older than me. And so, like, I kind of, like, drew to him naturally. And so, I watched him work. I watched him get married. He was somebody else in my life who was married in my childhood. And I just admired who he was. I looked up to him. He was, like, the only one who would really take time to talk to me and ask me the hard questions, joke with me, and kind of keep me on the up and up. So those were the first 2 guys in my life, 2 men that I humbly revere as those who were representations of my life as a kid. And so, yeah, definitely my uncle and my grandfather. What about you?
For me, definitely my father. Of course I had uncles and a lot of different people around, but, whenever I think about who I admired and who I wanted to be, in terms of, being a protector, provider, all those pieces that we really talk about and hold dear. As a man, I always stem back to my dad all the time, just because, as I mentioned, pretty frequently, I lost my mom when, I was young. She was young. She was only 33 years old when she passed away from breast cancer. I was 10 at the time. So naturally, being that I was the second oldest in the house, and my older brother is 5 years older than me. He moved out when he was 18. So naturally, you have to step up, right? You take on a lot of those responsibilities really early, and I think that that's something, especially in our community, that is pretty prevalent. In both of us being educators and working, in the public school system, we've definitely seen that, where you have 9-10-year-old kids cooking dinner and watching their siblings while their parents are at work. But I think what we really have to unpack here, and I think there's a lot to unpack, to be honest with you, is that there's a lot of different I guess historical ramifications and context that we can really go into, in terms of men in the home. But I think to really circle back around and answer your question completely, my father being that solid figure, where I saw him get up early in the morning every day. He used to catch 2 city buses to work, 2 buses back home. Make sure that we all had what we needed, the essentials, right? Food, water, clothing, shelter, and getting to school every day. And it was kind of, to me, a rites of passage type of thing, where it was just like, this was a normal thing. This is what you do. Like, you step up, and I had to learn that pretty quickly. But I was beneficial to have my father there. But I knew a lot of folks, a lot of my friends, different people in my neighborhood, and a lot of people that I meet now as an adult who did not have that luxury. I thank God for that, for sure, because I've seen what can happen whenever you don't have that representation, right? And it can be a difficult thing. So speak to your experience about thinking about things. I guess we can go kind of historically. What have you seen as like some of the detriments of not really having that representation, or that image?
Oh man, I've seen young boys have externalized behaviors that may not have been the most positive, in an attempt to grab the attention of that father figure that they wish they had, whether it's the father who just isn't in their life, or if it's someone else that they are gleaning towards. They externalize a lot of those behaviors because they're looking for that attention. And
Right.
And then you also notice that there is oftentimes a little bit of tension or conflict in the house because he's the only male representation in the house of a single parent household, and he thinks he's a man, and he's growing up, he's parentified, and all those things. And so you often see like a lot of discourse at home with mom and the kids, or you will see him take a liking, or those boys in the neighborhood take a liking to him, and then take them under his wings. And then now, he's found some big homies, some big brothers, some male figures that he can idolize or relate to because they welcome him into the ranks or what have you. And that can go a whole nother route, you know what I'm saying? And I'm speaking for myself. Like I said, I didn't mention my father when we talked about male representation in this early on, because he wasn't really in my life for a long part of my childhood. But I think one of the things that really set it apart was I had protective factors. I had people who kind of stepped in, and his mom, although he wasn't in my life, she
Right.
Jacqueline Sutton is like the angel on earth for me. You know what I'm saying? And it's because of her selflessness and her investment and love for me that I think I didn't feel the blow so hard. You know what I'm saying? And I could paint a picture really quickly, and let's get back to what we're talking about. But sure. My father was, in and out. had got on drugs, you know what I'm saying, and had to supply his high, and he used to steal, you know what I'm saying, from his mama, you know what I'm saying, and because my grandmother didn't want me to know that those things were happening. Like if a TV was stolen on Friday and she knew I was coming over that night, she would go buy a TV and put it on the shelf, on the book state, on whatever, on the entertainment system, and I would get there and would never know that her other TV was just gone, because she didn't want me to know, you know, what was going on in her in her household or with my father. And so, you know, I think I'm blessed to have had like those protective factors in my life, because a lot of young men may not have even had that. You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine not having a father figure, but then not only not having a father figure, but not having any protective factors to kind of soften the blow of not having that male figure in your life? So I commend her for that. And I just thank God for her, because I don't know where I would be without her, because she definitely stood in strong where he didn't stand in. So like I said, I've seen it, man. My godson, a lot of us, you know, we searched for it, man. And I even found myself kind of creating a cycle again, because I was trying to overcompensate for my godson and be there for him in a certain way. And I realized that no matter what I did, it didn't matter, because it wasn't coming from his father. You know what I'm saying? So I think the connection and the relationship with the son and the father is so, so important. And it's a shame that historically it has been to the point where we are more commonly saying single parent mother households than we are saying households with fathers, or in your case, like, you know, a single parent father, you know, raising 6 kids and standing on his 10 toes and making it happen. It's a rare thing, man. It's a rare thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, talking about it, you know, from the historical context, because I definitely try to make sure that, you know, from my own understanding and just knowledge and wisdom, that I really take heed to, you know, and this is, you know, definitely in terms of our people, looking at things from a historical context, right? And really trying to understand, you know, not just what the state of the situation is, but how did we get here, right? How did this even come about? So thinking about it from that lens, you know, you look at certain things, right? You know, we always, for whatever reason in this country, they like to start history at enslavement, right? Notice I didn't say slavery, because they didn't bring slaves. They brought free African people here and enslaved them, right? So I just want to make that real clear. But, you know, from that point, you know, the separation of the families, you know, basically snatching children from their mother's arms, separating, you know, spouses, and then leading up into, you know, the Jim Crow era, you know, the crack epidemic, and, you know, the war on drugs, if you will, all those things which basically displaced usually the man from the home, right? The black man from the home. And, you know, we see the evidence and, you know, basically the result of a lot of those things, you know, as a snowball effect. So, you know, for my father to be in the house, you know, and not, you know, be incarcerated or, you know, be, you know, in that system, you know, was definitely an anomaly, you know, for sure. And I recognize that. And, you know, one thing that we really have to, you know, get into is, you know, number one, understanding the nature of that, and then also dispelling the cycle. You know, how do we, you know, put a wrench in this machine and stop it, right? Because it's really just kind of run the gambit and wreaked havoc in a lot of lives, right? So, you know, us as educators, you working with the youth, as a counselor, can you talk to the role of, you know, we talked about, like, you know, the big homies in the street and what could happen if the wrong, we'll say, mentorship is in place, if you will. Can you speak more so to the other side of that, in your experience, in your role?
Absolutely. So, you know, I think a lot of the times the roles and the things that we do in our adulthood stem from us being kids, right? And we see the gaps that we had, so we want to fill in those gaps when we become older and do for others what we wish we could have done for ourselves or had someone do for us. And so for me, when I got into education, my first year, man, from Teach for America, like, we weren't supposed to. It's unprecedented, but I started a freaking boys club, man, a gentleman's club, my very first year, where, We talked about conflict resolution. We talked about advocating for your community. We talked about, knowing how to do a tie. We did community service outreach. We decorated trees for nursing homes. We gave blankets and food to the homeless in the communities. And these young men were wearing suit and ties and actually having guest speakers come talk to them about, careers and goals and things of that nature. And these were the same little knuckleheads that would be in the hallway prior to cutting up, but they took it seriously. And I think in my first year, it had made such a profound impact because we was out in D.C. 14th and Park, and it was right after the Mike Brown verdict that came out, and we were doing the blanket drive and everything, and we was in our suits, and we actually made the news that day. So these boys were getting exposure to new things, and we talked about exposure in our first episode. Yep. It's important because here these young boys are who are born and raised in D.C., Southeast, Northeast, different parts of the city, who are now in suit and tie talking before cameramen and news and actually laying on the ground and protesting for what they believed in. And I say all this to say, like you said, on the flip side of that, positive mentorship is so critical because although we can't readily and right away change the historical context and ramifications of, disenfranchised Black men in America, we can make an impact in the educational system. We can make an impact by mentoring and grabbing these young men and showing them that what love feels like, showing them what leadership looks like, showing them that you can make it out and you can make a difference, showing them that they are important, that they have a future, and that they matter. I think those are all the things that, as an educator, as a counselor, as a person in the mental health field, I lean towards the most because I realize that, like you said, we can't moan and grope about what isn't and what hasn't been. We have to get in there, get dirty, and make those changes right now and make the impact that we can make. Because that impact of that day and those years that I have done those different programs, those young people have been touched in one way or another. And whether it is right now or if it's 10 years from now, they will never forget those moments. So we got to invest and deposit those moments into those young men through these positive mentorships.
Right. When, I guess, if ever, when was the first year, I guess, in school that you had a Black male teacher?
Shoot, boy. Black male? I had a couple male. I'm trying to think, like...
And I pose the question because this is something that I've opened up, to a greater audience of other people as well. And just
I can land on it.
Yeah, just thinking about it,
Yep.
It's not a thing that we often, I think about very much, but there's something to really be said about the impact and influence of having that Black male educator in that space with you, during that time. So, I'm gonna let you go ahead and jump in.
For me, it literally was my freshman year in high school. I was supposed to be in the math program, but I didn't apply for it. So I was in a gen ed math geometry class. So I was a freshman in the class with all these juniors and seniors, and it was crazy, man. It was like lean on me. It was crazy in there.
East Side High.
And I'm this young little timid little goody boy or whatever, but my geometry teacher, Mr. Ribbity, he was my first male Black educator ever. And then from there I had a few others, but it wasn't until I was in high school that I had my first male Black educator.
Yeah, and I've heard, mixed reviews on this concept. And I think a lot of it plays into geography, definitely like where you are. Because I've heard some folks, and these are other educators as well, say like, well, I've always had, Black teachers, and I've definitely had Black male teachers, all throughout. But I think what is missing in many instances, in many cases, is that, that reflection, I guess, of ourselves in more so like the elementary sector, right? Like, you might get to middle school, high school, and have, that male teacher there. But for whatever reason, in elementary school, it seems like there's always kind of been like just this gap. It's not really, up until I think recently in my experience, has been more so kind of addressed and spoken about and dealt with, where I know, like, certain places are doing different programs. Definitely in DC, they started a program where they were bringing in young black males, I think, that were actually graduating from the DC high schools to work like in, the early childhood sector, right? Like your pre-K, kindergarten, and then definitely trying to bring in more black men to teach at the elementary level. So, I'm thinking about it, and I always reflect back on my own experience and how I ended up, because I think my first black male teacher actually was a music teacher, but around the same time I had a black male science teacher, and that had just ignited the whole thing. I was already into science, but to have him as a teacher and that experience, and he was just different from what I knew. And then, going into high school is when I had my second black male teacher, who was a chemistry teacher. So it's like those two things together. I go to college and I study chemistry. It was like, it all came full circle. And then when I reflect on it, I'm like, that wasn't on accident, right? It happened on purpose. And the influence there, really, it really shaped, what I would be and what I would want for myself. And, I'm forever grateful to them. But in your experience, considering, your role as a teacher, what is something that you feel like you have done to really kind of solidify that impact on, particularly the young black male students that you serve?
For me, man, I'm a big kid, man. I think one of my strongest points or strongest aspects of my life that I think I can really say that I can do confidently is building relationships, right? So for me, I realized I got to meet my young men where they are, but still keep them to the same level of expectation. So, we gonna get this work done, but we can go outside, and if you get this work done, I can go, take care of you on the football field real quick. You know what I'm saying? That could be the incentive. And then through those moments where I'm meeting them where they are and like playing with them and kind of letting them express themselves freely outside of the classroom, they see that I care. If they hungry and they didn't have nothing or whatever, and I'm getting me something from Subway or whatever, I come back with a 6-inch or something like that, and we come chop it up and all in my classroom, they see that I care. Right. But if I still hold them to accountable and I sit them out for recess or whatever the case may be, or I'm doing a disciplinary referral, they still know that I care. Like I'm still giving them the even kill. Like I'm not gonna praise you and then also not hold you accountable and still chin check you when necessary, because it's necessary as a young black man to know both roads. But I think in that way, because they looking for that male interaction and that male role model, if you will. And I taught 5th grade and mostly, and I taught middle school too. I think I'm able to kind of like ruffle them a little bit and kind of show them and kind of get to them like Mr. Banks can be suit and tie. Right. But I still know where you're coming from because I still kind of can relate. So I think just having that relationship with them, building that relationships, letting them know that I see them and that they care, really, really makes an impact, which is like the most important thing to me in what I do even today.
Right. Just thinking about the role of, because I think we could, between the two of us, share, back and forth experiences and situations of mentorship, for days, right? And talk about what we've done and what we've experienced, as kids ourselves. But outside of the role of mentorship, what do you think the greater role of manhood is in society? And I guess we can speak more specifically to our community. Like what, beyond, being that figure, like, I guess, what else is there?
I think the next thing, man, like we gotta educate our young black men, man. I think like mentorship is when you pretty much bring them under your wings and you kind of show them things and you build a relationship with them. But I think now it's time, like you kind of go into our facts, man, like action. We got to be about action now. It's enough of the pity party. It's enough of all that stuff. Like we know that life ain't fair and this and the third, but now we got to really get about our business and be about action. So we got to activate and put light the fire really in our young black men to realize that we got to make a change in how we view things, man. And I say that, as I reflect on even just like recently, man, like back home in Portsmouth, man, like young black boys are dying every single day. If you look at hip hop culture, all these young rap artists are dying, getting murdered every single, like, I didn't even know who Pop Smoke was until after he was murdered, bro. Like, these young boys are 19, 20, 22, 18, like, young boys are leaving this world way too soon. And it's like, we got to change that narrative, man. It's not about toting guns and doing this and doing that. Like, we got to really change it, man, and have better representation of us as people so that we can kind of make that change that's necessary to push our young Black men forward. But it got to be less about talking, more about action, for sure.
Nice. And one thing that I think that we have to really combat, though, and, you know, this is something I struggle with on a regular basis, is seeing, you know, how we're portrayed, you know, in we'll just say like mass media, and all those outlets, because it's like, here I am, you know, presenting this, right, this one way, but then also I have to fight against all of the stereotypes and all of the crap, right, that is spewed on a grand stage, right, TV, radio, all of this stuff. So it's like, man, it's definitely an uphill battle, and, you know, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a discouraging thing, but I think we do have to recognize and you know, point out, like, as you were just saying before, like, it's not about this. Like, this is not real. But then ultimately, you know, I think the greater struggle is, you know, dealing with the programming aspect of it. You know, when it boils down to, as you're talking about, you know, educating our young men, you know, and this goes with our young women as well, you know, basically interrupting and interfering with that early programming that tells them, you know, this is what this is who you're expected to be, you know, you can't go beyond this, right, you can't be this, you can't do this, all this, you know, all the negativity, all of the things that, you know, and I came up with a theory, it's called the black box theory.
Okay.
And it's basically talking about how, you know, as a young Black man, and I can only speak from my experience, of course, right? And it's just talking about how, you know, we are basically prescribed to boxes throughout our life, right? So, you know, initially you come out, you're talking about, you know, the emotional boxes, and, you know, those limitations where it's like you can't open up, you can't share your feelings, you can't talk openly about what's going on with you. You can't go to therapy, things like that, which, you know, things are being dispelled now, but, you know, at a greater scale, it needs to happen more. So there's that, right? And then there's also, you know, the mental capacity, the mental box that says, you know, capability, right? You're not able to do this, which also leads into talking about, you know, special education and overclassification, and over-medication of young Black men in particular, you know, so there's those things, but then talking about even the physical ramifications of these boxes, right? You know, that animal cage that they like to put us in, right? That jail cell, right? That's nothing but another box. And then ultimately leading to, you know, the end all be all, which is that casket, which many of our young men, you know, are seeing, as you mentioned, like way too early, right? I had a cousin who, you know, didn't make it to 20, right? He didn't make it out of his teens. You know, he was gunned down in front of a rec center. You know, it was just crazy, right? So, and I'm just like, that's just one story, right? Between the two of us, I'm sure we got plenty, but it's just like, why is that the narrative? You know, and how do we disrupt that, right? How do we dismantle it? Because it's on us, you know. At the end of the day, you know, as much as I talk about dealing with mass media and representation and all that stuff, I don't control the media outlets, and I don't have a hand in it. So all I can do is what I can do from where I am, and, you know, that's, you know, starting mentorship, you know, doing different programming, working in the school system, or reaching out, you know, doing a podcast where we, you know, really get into, you know, these things right at the root, and you know. I think it's just going to take a greater effort and a greater mass push for us who, you know, who look like this, but also represent, you know, every single great possibility that is available.
Man.
And, you know, just for it to be more readily available. You know, and I think about it all the time about how many amazing black men, especially like the young black men, you know, 30 and under, that I know personally, and all the great things. And it's just like, why is that not publicized? Why are we not at the forefront of, you know, what people are digesting as the quote unquote culture, right? Because regardless of anything, like, we're still hip hop. We, you know what I mean? We're still all these things. It's just, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, don't look at that. Look over here. It's like the unseen hand. And I think that, you know, we really have to take it upon ourselves to make more of a push, you know, to deal with that, right? And take it, you know, face it head on, because otherwise, you know, we're just going to be stagnant, or we're going to go backwards, right? And we don't need any of that. So,
nah, bro, nah. You said something that really like hit me in my heart, man. And you know, I talked about it, I mean, one time before, but not up here. But it's like when you said people men that can look like us, but have the great part, the aspects of what we have in life and where we are in our lives. It hit me, because the reason why I have these locks and all that is because I'm finally not afraid to be me unapologetically. When I was 18 years old, I was racially profiled. I was arrested. I was charged with charges that didn't even make sense. And I was, because of the lack of education of the judicial system and laws, I let the system pretty much take advantage of me. You know, I pled guilty to underage possession of alcohol, drunk in public, and all these things. Prom night, my senior year of high school, and I wasn't drinking. I hadn't been drinking. I wasn't drunk or anything. But all my friends were in tuxes and dresses coming from prom, and I didn't go to prom. So I was in my little cargo shorts and a white shirt and my little, you know, Vans or whatever, and I had my locks and my tattoos. And so Virginia Beach, Virginia, you know what I'm saying? The place where you had your first moment is the place where I will always remember as the worst night of my life. Because here I am, an educated black man, getting ready to go to Virginia Tech, and was at the top of my class, and I was being harassed and arrested for something I didn't even do. It went from, I fit the description of someone who fled the scene of a hit and run, and when they realized that wasn't going to stick, they changed it to these other things without even giving me my Miranda rights or doing a sobriety check or anything. I'm in the holding cell at 18 years old, and because I didn't know no better, my grandfather was the only one who, well, my grandmother's husband, Benny, was the only one who could take me back and forth to court. I went to court without a lawyer. They told me to plead first offender. I did. I was on probation and all the other things for the whole year. And to this day, that's on my record. You know what I'm saying? And so it took a lot for me. I was so shook, and trauma is real. I cut my lock before I went to college because I was like, yo, I'm not going to Virginia Tech in the mountains, predominantly white area with dreads, tattoos, and I'm a big dude. I'm cutting my hair, and I'm going to conform, and I'm going to stay in my role and stay in my lane. And I lost a part of myself in that time. And so when I decided to grow my locks again, it was more so a statement to being that, like, I am finally me again. I'm okay with being who I am. I'm not even okay. I'm proud of what I look like. Right. I'm proud of what I bring to the table because I know who I am. But you have so many other young black men who are afraid to be themselves because they don't think outside. They don't think that they're even able to do so comfortably. Yeah. They can't go to sleep. They can't walk in a certain way. They can't do this, do that without being ridiculed, scrutinized, or even shot down and murdered. You know what I'm saying? So I think it is a bigger picture, a bigger stance that we have to take, because it's a lot of trauma that we have to get past because we are afraid, dog. Like when I drive down the road, no matter what, the police officer could be on the other side of the median. If I see a police officer, my heart starts speeding up. I make sure my seatbelt on. I'm 10 and 2 because I remember that day. You know what I'm saying? And so I think, you know, aside from just educating our young black men, we have to allow them to regain some confidence to being themselves, because a lot of us are afraid to do so. You know what I'm saying? And some others who may not be afraid to do so are losing their lives at the spite of it. So there's a lot of work that we got to do to really get ahead of this. And I think, this one podcast may not do it, but it's going to spark something that's going to make some changes happen down the road. And I'm excited to be a part of it. But man, that really hit me when you said that. And I say, I apologize when I'm talking too long or I'm belaboring the point. But
that's why we're doing it.
I think that those moments is what we really have to, talk about, because, and then this is it. I think about grit and transcendence, because every job that I've had since then, I've always had to give them character statements. I always have to show them my records have been dissolved. I have to show them that I've done this and do that as an educator, as a counselor, as a social worker. When I apply to grad school, every single time I look around, I have to justify something that was wrongly done to me. And that scar just keeps getting ripped open, and ripped open every single time. So we got a lot of work to do.
For sure. I mean, and that's just, this is the thing that really gets me, because this situation, anybody hearing this who is not of the culture or does not have the background that we might have or be a product of a certain environment, they would hear your story and say, wow, be blown away, right? Like, this is crazy. It's an outrage. Oh my goodness. But this is, like, dare I say, the norm. Like, your story, and I'm not taking nothing away from you. Nothing, and let me start by first saying I really appreciate you sharing that. Thanks for opening up and, using this platform to really be vulnerable. Be vulnerable in this moment, because as you were talking about the young black men, who basically are afraid, as you were, to be themselves, and not be unapologetically true to who you are. I think another big piece of that is that a lot of these young black men don't necessarily even know who they are to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't even begin to fight for your individuality or who you truly are if you never even had a chance to figure it out, right? You were already, labeled, right? And it was already like predetermined, like your destiny was already kind of sealed, right? Because this is what is the expectation. This is what, the statistics say. This is what the numbers say. This is what the TV says. So it must be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the narrative. But so for many of us, it's like the book was already written before we even grabbed the pen. It was like, and to me, I think, the most disheartening part about that is that it's essentially theft. It's theft of life, right? You basically are taking my livelihood without me even recognizing that I have it, number one, and having the opportunity to create, who I am and what I will be for myself, right? You are already saying, this is what it is. This is who you are. You'll never be anything more than this. And, to your point about, what our role is, I think you're saying is, that we have to be the ones to basically step in and stop that, right?
Yes.
Stop it right in its tracks, because it's just like, you think about these are kids, right? In many of these, situations that we're talking about, these are kids that grow into men, right? And a lot of the kids, going back to, even talking about my own experience, growing up and, having to step up as a young man in the household and things like that, they don't even get to be kids. Like, a lot of children in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our culture, don't have childhoods.
They're parentified from a very early age.
Exactly. So if you go through that early on, and then you get to 21 years old, by the grace of God, right? Because a lot of us, we don't. Then it's like, oh, well, why is he like that? Why does he act this way? And why does he personify the stereotypes, the issues, the things that we see? I mean, what would you be, or what would you do if you were spoon-fed, these things, throughout your life. And then going back even further and talking about, the historical ramifications of it all. If your father wasn't present, or if you didn't have a solid mentor or somebody to look up to, and you didn't have the safeguards or, the protections, as you mentioned before, like, what do you expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we have to look at it and say, it's not on us to look down upon, or, to basically turn our back to our brothers, right? It's we can't do that. And it's just something that needs to be, taking place more at a greater capacity. And, it starts, one at a time, right? Each one teach one. And I think about one of my favorite quotes, from Frederick Douglass, that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men, right? So in many cases, it's like once a young black man reaches a point in life, right? Because a lot of us, especially in the eyes of the law, we become men at 16 is when they start trying to try us as adults and things like that for crazy stuff that, in many cases, like all these documentaries that, it's all these situations of, things being placed upon young black men that they didn't do. And then 20 years later, they've served all this time. And now you find out, this person lied back then. So it's like, there again, the theft of life, right? So, at this point, it becomes, I think it just becomes like a greater issue to the core of society that, once he reaches this point, the expectation is, you are to act like everybody else in society. Forget your trauma.
Get all
what
that.
You've been through.
It didn't happen. It's not important.
Whatever. It is what it is. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which is, come on, right? Whereas if you going back to the Frederick Douglass quote, if the young men had those things in place early on to build, right, then of course what you're going to get as a result is a strong man. However, we get to a point where it's like, we see all these, think about prison population, the school to prison pipeline, all those things. And it's like, of course, like the natural order of what this system has created lends directly to the desired result, right? 90-something% of the prison population, where black people in this country are 12% of the entire population, period. Look at the numbers don't lie, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So you got to think about, like, what is the overall purpose of it, and what basically needs to happen. And this is a conversation that's been going on forever. So from your lens, what have your experiences been with, in terms of our conversation with other black men, particularly at our age group, right? Our peers.
So for one, man, like, I feel like the conversation is not happening enough. But it for me personally, I do have dialogue around it. I think my boy Sean Betts, man, Virginia State, you know what I'm saying? Y'all repping heavy right now. But we had actually started doing a men's Bible study. You know what I'm saying? Where we would just, like, every Monday we would get together, and then we tried to start incorporating other people. We had like 3 or 4 other people that was joining us, but we just wanted to change the narrative, man. Like, I think, and there's one thing that we do, and I used to first, I'd be like, dog, like, you being sensitive, dog. I saw that mess, dog. But, like, like, Sean, bro, like, he loves you heavy. Like, he'll let you know he loves you heavy. And I think it's an up top thing. He from up north, you know what I'm saying? I think it's an up top thing. But he'll love you, he'll tell you, I love you, bro. Like, ain't nothing you can do about it. And I think that's kind of another thing that's missing, dog. We gotta be okay with loving each other. You know what I'm saying? So like we used to always tell you we love each other, we hug each other. We used to do Sunday dinners at his crib or come to my crib. We just used to kick it because we don't love each other enough, like in this world, bro. And I'm talking about us as a young black men.
Right.
And I was gonna say, like, some of the most like rewarding work that I've ever done as to date was when I was working for the for Sasha Bruce for the young homeless youth population in DC, where I'm working with these young boys who 22, 23, 24 years old, and even 17, 18, 19 that just feel like no one cares. So why would I ever change? You've already forgotten about me. I'm homeless. No one cares. Whatever. So why would I even dare to change?
Right.
And so some of the most impactful work I ever done was just keep on loving on them, dog. Like telling them I love them, hugging on them. My boy Big Mo, he's like one of the head dudes that work there. And he tells every single person at that spot that I love you every day. I love you. When they go home for the weekends, I love y'all. Y'all be safe, and I'll see y'all on Monday. You know, because I know it's going to be a long weekend for you, especially in the winter months. So I think we got to go back to letting them know that they are loved, dog. Like, it's a lot of trauma that they got to uncover. And it's not going to just happen overnight. But I've literally seen in the 2-3 years that I was interacting with that space, the culture changed. Those same knuckleheads who was in there, you know, shoot, you know, doing whatever they was doing. Now, I love you, dog. When they knew I was leaving to come to Texas, man, Tay, I'm mad you leaving, dog, but I love you, dog. And to hear this from some boys who you would think on the street would be tough guys that you would just overlook and that you wouldn't want to be around. But we gotta love each other more, dog, and we have to be openly and comfortable with doing it. Right. There's nothing soft about loving your brother. There's nothing soft about telling him that you love him, that you miss him, that you care about him, that you hope he does well, that you think about it, that you pray for him. That's strength. Because we need to hear it. We don't hear it enough. You know what I'm saying? So I said to say, like, the work that we're doing now on this podcast, the work that, you know, Bets and everyone's doing, and that's why I love the fact that my brothers in the circle is all doing work, bruh. Like, we all doing things that are commendable, that is going to make a change in this world one way or the other. And I think that it takes multiple circles of that same magnitude to kind of make a level of impact, because it's hard to do that one day, you know, reach one, teach one type thing. We have to do it on a more exponential level. And this platform right here is giving us some sort of platform to do so.
For sure. Yeah, that was, I mean, what more can you say, right? I don't even know what else to add, bro. You know, I do just want to, you know, publicly just say, Jamonte, bro, I love you, man.
I love you too, dog.
Because,
Word.
You know, you really, you know, you really made a solid point, you know, and we can get to the point of actually closing this out with that, is that, you know, that whole idea of, and we talked about this, I think it was the last podcast, which was talking about, you know, loving out loud. We were talking about more so like in a romantic context with our wives, but then also like with our family members too. But, you know, the idea of being present with somebody and really showing appreciation for them, you know, at a deep level is something that I think has really been missing too, for sure. And, you know, I think about it in the context of, you know, now being a father and, you know, my son, you know, and I think about, you know, the things that I'm doing now, and just, you know, when I look at him and, you know, when I, you know, interact with him, you know, he's only, you know, he's going on 8 months, but regardless, it's like, I want to create that now and start that already so that he doesn't even know, you know, the other side or the, you know, the absence of this, right? And he's already outside of that cycle. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing your sentiments on that, and definitely shedding light on, you know, other brothers who, you know, are really making impacts and doing the work, because, you know, it, as they say, it takes a village. And of course, you know, we must include our women in this as well. But,
Absolutely.
You know, as men, we definitely have to kind of, you know, step up and assume that role. So, you know, I really appreciate you for you know, bringing that to light and you know, making it a living thing, you know, on this platform. So definitely, we can kind of close out with one, you know, if you just want to give one piece of either advice or information, one piece of advice or information for young black men, if you could speak to them, what would you say?
You matter. You matter. Your life is important. The gift that you have within you can only be brought forth if you know that you matter. You have to understand that it is critical. Your gift has to be brought into this world for its purpose to become full circle into 100% of everyone doing so. Don't lose sight of the fact that you matter. Don't lose sight of your goals. Don't ever think that you're less than, because you're not. You're great, you're mighty, and you're perfect. There's no flaw within you because you're made in a perfect image. I love you immensely. You're not alone. Tell someone else that's close to you that you love them as well. Shoot, tell a stranger that you love them, because there's no lie in that. You can love someone without knowing them deeply, because I love you and I haven't even met you yet. So I love you. You matter. You're important. Your gift is. I'm looking forward to seeing your gift come to life. My life won't be as fulfilled unless I see your life come to fruition. And that's all I got for you. Love courageously. Love vulnerably. Be bold in it, because it's the only life you get.
Facts. And with that, we're just going to go ahead and, close this thing out. Jamonte, again, bro, as always, it's a pleasure. I love you to death, man. Love you to life.
Love you to life. I love you to life. I like that. I like that better. I got a ring to it.
For sure. And, continue to pass this message on, push this thing forward. And anybody who's tuning in, whether you're watching us on YouTube or checking us out on Spotify or, whatever the case may be on Anchor, we really appreciate you. We love you as well. And we hope that you continue to come back and enjoy the Facts Podcast. That is faith, action, culture, truth, and solidarity. So we are out. Peace and love.
Love y'all, man. Peace.
Just continue to push forward, continue to know that you have purpose, and continue to fulfill your dreams and your passions, and everything else will fall into place.